People are merely obstacles to propel you forward. That was nasty. This is her dream job, but she's keeping those side hustles alive. Stella is harboring a lot of guilt for her mother's death. She believes she's responsible for her mother's death. Hey you, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Jenny and I'm a licensed psychotherapist. Let me ask you a question. Did you really think that Cruella was a villain? I'd love to hear from you, so let me know in the comments. Anyway, today we're breaking down the life of Cruella. So if you're interested, please keep on watching. According to the film Synopsis, during the punk rock era of 1970s London, a young and ambitious con artist named Estella crosses paths with two resourceful thieves. Her unique sense of style attracts the attention of the mysterious Baroness von Hellman. This encounter sparks a series of events that reveal Estella's darker side and ultimately leads to her transformation into the famous Cruella, a character known for her outrageous fashions and her desire for revenge. So let's do a deep dive in together. In the beginning of the movie, we could see that Estella is very confident. She starts school and even gets the guts, I guess, to introduce herself to the boys and try to befriend them. But that ultimately doesn't go well because boys don't want to be friends with girls. It's unfortunately that typical things that kids do. They don't appreciate her trying to be friends. They don't want to be friends with a girl. So she ends up standing up for herself. And of course, the boys don't appreciate that. They need to get revenge. They need to get her back. She beat them up. She fought them. She stood up for herself. And boys can't have that. They don't want to be seen to have been beaten up by a girl. She stands up for herself and ends up in a downward spiral of always getting into altercations with different people. She gets bullied by them so much. It was so hard to see, but I was happy to see that she found this dog. And as you all may or may not know, dogs are really beneficial for humans. They force us to get up and take them for walks. They force us to take care of them, especially if you're someone that experiences depression or anxiety. Sometimes having a trained dog, a service dog, could really be beneficial for you. I know I've worked in social work spaces where people have had a support animal that come to work with them and provide them with that support, and that's really beneficial for them. So I was really happy to see that she had one. And unpopular opinion, while I think dogs are very cute, I'm also very scared of them. So it wouldn't work for me, but I'm always excited that it's beneficial for other people. Anyway, the film introduces Anita, who is later bullied. And of course, Cruella stands up for Estella, not wanting her to be bullied, not wanting her to have a bad day. I felt like that was really sweet of her to stand up for her friend. And the thing is, I'm seeing a pattern of Estella standing up for herself, standing up for the people around her, but still getting into trouble. What do you all think? Let me know in the comments. Something that is hard for children is I notice a pattern of when a child gets in trouble at school, people stop taking their side or looking at their side or finding out the whole story of what happened. A question whenever an incident happens that you should always ask is, what happened? What led up to this incident? What are the circumstances surrounding this incident? What really happened? And since Estella was already known for being a quote unquote troublemaker, they didn't really care. They didn't want to know. And unfortunately, that happens. And this is when children start feeling like they're not heard, they're not listened to. So if no one's going to listen to them or support them or stand up for them, they're going to want to stand up for themselves sometimes. And one thing that is always important for people to remember is that there are three sides to the story: your side, my side, and the not subjective, objective truth. Estella, of course, ends up getting expelled from school, and I was really happy to see that her mother did stand up for her and was by her side throughout all this, wasn't really too angry with her. And I felt like that really motivated Estella to maybe try to be a quote unquote better person. And the reason I was really happy to see that her mother was on her side is that sometimes when you're a child and you're going through and you're getting in trouble, it's not really beneficial to have all of the adults in your life against you. It's not going to be beneficial. You need to have someone you can turn to. Yes, you should hold a child accountable for things that they have done, but it's also important to be firm but caring in your response to what's happened, because if you can see what I saw in the movie, she was getting in trouble because she was standing up for herself and for others. And her mother really was able to say, hey, what you did wasn't okay. You need to work on that, while still standing by her side and not alienating her. Estella seems to have a really good relationship with her mother, and I noticed that she wanted to be a good girl for her mother. She wanted to be good for her, not for herself, but for her mother. So because she gets in trouble and gets expelled from school, they had to leave the town they're in and move to London. And when she moves to London, unfortunately, her mother passes away. And Estella really blames herself for her mother's passing. And she ultimately makes a promise to say that, hey, I'm going to be good for my mother. She always wanted me to be good. And the way I'm going to honor her, because it was my fault that she was murdered or killed, is I'm going to be a good girl. To me, in watching the movie, that scene where her mother dies was really interesting. The dogs were running after Estella, but all of a sudden, they ran after the mother and threw her off the cliff. So it was really interesting. She eventually makes it to London where she meets Jasper and Horace. And it seems like Estella finds Jasper to be insightful, whereas she finds Horace to be a little bit annoying. And I forgot to mention, they are petty thieves. And I say this because Jasper was there and wanting her to be a part of their little posse, because he was like, he could tell that something was wrong. And he was like, she has no one, and let's bring her into our group. Well, he didn't really say that, but he was really advocating for her to Horace, because Horace didn't really seem too interested in really befriending her. But Jasper was like, let's bring her into our fold. She would also be beneficial for us because she could be the distraction. A little girl, who's gonna really notice or think that a little girl is stealing? I'm like, you're pretty smart for thinking that way. He was very intuitive. So in looking at a child like Jasper, you wonder, you're so young but so wise beyond your years. And unfortunately, when a child has that kind of wisdom, it usually comes from some sort of trauma or something they have been through during their childhood. And as you can see, they're homeless and they're petty thieves. So something must have gone wrong in his life. They're very street smart. They had to learn to be this way. And it's unfortunate. The reason he's this way is because he's had to look out for himself during his lifetime. At a very young age, they had to learn to steal. This is how they fed themselves. This is how they stayed alive. Jasper is also seen as calm, and that often isn't really the case. When children have experienced a lot of change, a lot of trauma in their young lives, they often turn inwardly to react. So their anxieties might not show up in the way that you would think it would show up for a child, but instead it might show up to them grinding their teeth, their heart's beating, they're shaking their leg. This is the way that you can probably see that a child is being affected by something, because maybe they expressed themselves outwardly and didn't really get any change. So they don't want to do that. They don't want to attract that. They don't want to be bad. Or sometimes they could have been raised in a home where it was really chaotic, where they were maybe getting physically or emotionally abused, and they were told, don't react, don't do this, don't do that. So they've learned to internalize their emotions. No matter what's happening, you may see them as calm, stoic, but they're anything but internally. Jasper is very kind. I would love to see the boys and even Estella's ACE test score results. And if you're wondering what the ACE test is, ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. This is a 10-question questionnaire that basically asks you to check if you've experienced any of the 10 things. So if you're interested and you want to see me share a link with that, let me know in the comments and I'll definitely put a link there or put a screenshot of something. As you all know, Estella had that white and black hair. And as you can see, I put a white earring for y'all, a little black tee to try to dress up a little bit in my little Estella Cruella vibe. I was like, should I put a little wig on? That would have been cute, but I didn't get a chance to do it. Maybe next time. Fast forward 10 years, you can see that Estella and the boys are very good at this pickpocketing thing. I mean, they are taking stuff and I'm like, hold on, how did you end up, I'm at a loss for words. Like, how did you learn that? How did you get to be so good at that? And yes, you could say it's quote unquote a bad thing for people to do, to steal. But the thing is, if you ever travel abroad, especially places like France, Spain, they'll tell you, watch out for pickpocketers. And as a therapist, a social worker, whenever I see an area with a high rate of stealing or whatever the case may be, I think that these people haven't had their needs met. It really reflects the issues people are facing there. While people do at times steal for the thrill of it, for the fun of it, and I'm talking about people that are usually diagnosed with kleptomania, based on the information that I got in the movie, this isn't what Estella and the boys weren't doing. They were stealing out of survival. They're orphans. They have no one else to rely on. This is all they know about how to survive. Again, the issues that society is facing. Because why did no one know that Estella wasn't in school or whatever the case is for all those years? Where has she been? I mentioned kleptomania back there a little bit ago, and if you don't know what that is, kleptomania is a mental health condition where a person feels an uncontrollable urge to steal things. People who have this condition might try unsuccessfully to not act on the urge and may feel remorse or guilt for stealing. Experts classify kleptomania as an impulse control disorder. It is often treatable with medication, therapy, or both. And this is Cleveland Clinic's definition of the mental health diagnosis. Oftentimes, people are stealing out of need and being priced out of life, honestly. And like I mentioned before, as we can see in the movie, 3 orphans looking for a way to live, a way to survive. Even the dog was in on it, y'all. Throughout the movie, you can see Estella is longingly looking at the House of Liberty, House of Baronet, the fashion house. She's really interested in them. She doesn't really say much about it, but you can see she's looking at them. And I didn't mention this, but in the beginning of the movie, she was often sketching because she was really interested in being a designer. Can I just say how much I love Jasper? He was really observant. And for her birthday, he got her a job at the Liberty of London because he noticed that she was often watching them and looking longingly at the store. Yes, he did get her the job via scheming, but he did get her the job. Something I loved seeing throughout the movie was Estella really going to that fountain to talk to her mother, to give her the good news. Because this is something that they were supposed to achieve together, she made sure to keep her mother's memory alive by talking with her. And this is the part of grief where it's like you may never get over the loss of someone, but you learn to incorporate them in your life in different ways. And this is what Estella does. And I feel like that's a great way to show maybe children or people that have lost their loved ones that this person is always with you in your heart. So Estella starts her first day at the Liberty of London. She is extremely excited. She's working as a cleaning person, but what I love to see throughout her time there is she consistently and continuously advocates for her to work as a fashion designer at the house or as a salesperson, even putting looks together. Although she's being treated poorly throughout the movie by the manager who consistently turns her down, that doesn't really hurt her spirit. She's looking longingly at the people that are sewing the clothes. She's just like, oh, one day I can be there. One thing I noticed that she even does when Horace specifically says, what's the angle? She's like, there is no angle. This is my job. I want to be here. I love it here. And I really like that. I thought that was nice. That's how much you can tell that she really, truly cares about this job. Fast forward, she gets into a little bit of trouble for having too bold of an opinion on a customer's outfit, and she is then ordered to stay later and go and clean the manager's office. Before the manager leaves, the manager is taking a shot, and I don't know what happens to Cruella, but she's like, I need to take that shot too after she gets done with cleaning the office. And when I see this, I see her using alcohol as a way to cope with being chastised, with being told no, with all of these trials and tribulations she's been experiencing at this job. She's using alcohol as a way to cope. And she drinks a little bit too much, goes into the window and fixes the display because she thought that display wasn't very nice. And she falls asleep at the display until the next morning when everyone kind of is like, what are you doing here? She gets in trouble with the manager, but the Baroness arrives and she seems to be really captivated by Stella's designs on the window. Like I talked about before, the coping mechanisms. What she used, drinking, wasn't appropriate, but when you're an orphan, you haven't had much support in life. You may not be aware of the more positive ways to cope, the more positive ways to ground yourself. My thing was, Estella, you didn't realize that the manager was going to notice his alcohol was gone in the morning, or she simply just didn't care? So the Baroness is so impressed with her display that she offers her a job. She wins, and so do the boys, because you can see that they steal some stuff too. In the meantime, that was the angle. Horace was like, where's the angle? And he got his angle, y'all. The theme that I noticed in this time is that Estella persevered to reach her dream. She took a chance by going to that mannequin and changing it, and it ultimately pays off. She gets the offer of a lifetime. I truly appreciated seeing her thank Jasper for this because it was really him that helped her get the job. Her first day at work, I was getting the Devil Wears Prada vibes. And if you're interested in that breakdown, I'll link it down below. I did break that movie down as well. The Baroness comes down from her throne to really come see the peasants because that's how she's treating them. She comes down from her throne and she's reading an article about how great she is. But I'm like, I haven't seen Baroness design any clothes. I see her looking at other people's designs and taking them, but I digress. She continues to read that article about herself and she's proud of herself. The only thing I can say is that maybe she's great at choosing looks. Estella ends up doing very well that day and the Baroness is very pleased. The Devil Wears Prada vibes come back. This is where the Baroness yells out her lunch to Estella, really, and it was something so super specific, but Estella ends up doing well and gets it right. Later in the movie, Estella really becomes like the Baroness's right-hand woman. She's sketching designs for Baroness. Baroness is excited to see them. This relationship is working out well. Estella's happy and so is Baroness. But one thing I did notice was Estella was often checking out the security system, seeing what's going on, what's in there, how do you open that? Yes, she wasn't stealing from Baroness, but she was making sure she was aware of what was going on in her surroundings. So that way, if they did need an angle, she didn't have to work too hard. She already knew them. This is her dream job, but she's keeping those side hustles alive. Things are going so well that in this part of the movie, I'm like, something needs to go down because it's too perfect. Everything is just happening too perfect. I need something to change right now. I noticed that Estella continues to talk through her mother throughout the movie. And like I mentioned before, I love this display of how people can grieve with the loss of someone so significant in their lives, especially someone they lost as a child. And to me, Estella communicating with her mother is really to show her, this is where I am in my life, this is what I'm doing. It's great that Estella continues to speak with her mother, but she also says this to her mother, and that makes me think like, She says, I'm trying to be the Estella that you wanted. And is it really healthy for you to live for someone else? Someone who's not even here anymore? Is that healthy for you to do? I don't think so, but what is the opposite of Estella? Things continue to go well with Baroness until she noticed that Baroness is wearing the necklace she lost on the night of her mother's murder. That's when things shift for her. She's like, what? I mean, Estella even loses her composure, and this is where other sides of her starts to peek through. Who she was when she was in school starts to peek through. She's like, why? She's probably thinking, why do you have my necklace? What's going on here? But she's able to restrain herself because she doesn't want to ring off any bells. She doesn't want Baroness to notice that she's upset. After all, this is possibly her mother's story. She wants to get all of the details. And to me, this was a great way for Estella to regulate her emotions. She was really upset, but she remembered, hey, there is something else that I may need from this. Let me ground myself. Let me do some breathing. Let me calm myself down. And she's successful with that. So this was a great way for her to cope. Estella decides that she wants the necklace back. This is how she can still connect with her mother. She wants it back, no questions asked. And I want you to remember that Estella is harboring a lot of guilt for her mother's death. She believes she's responsible for her mother's death. So she's like, oh no, I have to do this to avenge my mother. I need to get that piece of my mother back. It's important to me. She even says, my mother hadn't failed. I had, and I wasn't going to fail her again. She was like, I killed my mother. I lost her necklace, but at least the necklace is something I can get back. I can get that piece of her back. She ends up talking to the boys about this, and they immediately get to work. Being that she is working for Baroness, she has an in. She's able to see her day-to-day schedule. She's able to see where she hides things. She's privy to all of this information, which is really helpful for her to get the necklace back. And if you remember, I mentioned that she was keeping her side hustles alive. She was still remembering the different locks. She was seeing how the different safes work. So her keeping track of those details really was beneficial for her. Something I love seeing is that you can see her friends truly cared for her. They went through the plan with her. They were on her side, but they make sure to remind her, hey, we want to help you. We want to do this. We'll support you, but this is a job that you love doing. Yes, the necklace would be great, but the necklace won't bring your mother back. Are you sure this is something you want to really do? And I truly appreciate this. The friends are being supportive, but they're keeping her accountable. They're helping to bring her back to reality. They're saying, will getting the necklace back have long-term positive effects for you? What do you all think? Would that be beneficial for her to get this necklace back and possibly ruining this wonderful job that she has? She doesn't change her mind about getting the necklace, but she does decide that maybe Estella doesn't go in, but Cruella does. And this is just what I'm thinking at this point during the movie. Fast forward, the other person that she meant to go was Cruella, so I was right. And let me tell you, she does some entrance. She looks great. Throughout this moment where they're planning to get the necklace back, so many things are happening. I'm at the edge of my seat. In my mind, I'm thinking the outfits the boys have on aren't real disguises. Jasper could have used a better hat for his hair. And I'm like, is that the whole thing about stealing, maybe? Looking as normal as possible, I guess? Horace gets caught throughout this. Cruella has to sit with Baroness. In the meantime, in my mind, in my head, I'm like, Cruella, Estella, run out of there. You're going to lose your job. That's what I'm thinking throughout this entire time. Even the dogs are growling at Cruella. And honestly, I'm having flashbacks to her mother's death. But Cruella maintains she stays there. And in my mind, I'm wondering, what is keeping Cruella there? Is it the approval from Baroness? Or is it her looking for answers from Baroness? Cruella is able to take the necklace off the Baroness, but the dog isn't able to hold on to it. The dog isn't able to run with it. Because the dog is not able to keep up with the necklace, this is when the Baroness uses the whistle and point to Cruella's dog. And this is where Cruella's kind of like, huh, that sounds familiar. I heard that sound the night my mother was murdered. So then she's looking at the Baroness in a totally different light now. She's like, you used that whistle on my mother. That whistle brought the dogs away from, because they were running after baby Estella, Cruella, and the dogs end up switching directions to run after her mother. So this is when she's putting it together like, hey, I didn't kill my mother. The Baroness blew the whistle to get the dogs away from me to kill my mother. So she truly has that epiphany right there. While they don't get the necklace back, Estella Cruella learn some important information about their lives. Once she comes to terms with all this, she goes on to describe the 5 stages of grief, and she adds revenge to it. I did mention before that her traumatic childhood and her being an orphan led to her being a thief. But if she's sophisticated enough to know the 5 stages of grief, I'm wondering if she saw a therapist during that time. As soon as she adds revenge to the stages of grief, she fully locks in. She's like, I am now Cruella, and I am going to avenge my mother's death. She gets rid of the burgundy hair. She now has her natural white and black hair. This is where the questions about dissociative identity disorder comes in, and we will discuss more about that later. So keep on watching for that. The goal remains the same, however. She wants that necklace back. I also noticed that when she shifts from being Estella to Cruella, she's also talking down to the boys. She's being very negative to them, and she needs their help. I don't know if I would have been able to help her. I might have left. But they see her as family, so they're like, okay, let's help her. But she wasn't treating them very well. And I'm wondering how often she's going to treat them this way and how often they'll accept her treating them this way. She even throws Horace's breakfast on the floor. Completely inappropriate behaviors are happening here. And the thing I felt was really bad was her not including them in all of the plans, but only some of the plans. The boys are upset, but they decide to talk it out and they decide to give her a chance. They say this is her coping with something that happened with her mother. Let's not take it out on her. Let's not be too harsh. Let's see how this plays out. And they continue to help her. I guess good on them. But me, the way I see that Cruella is turning this into a one-sided relationship, I want to urge the boys to start working on boundaries and what they look like for them. Anita is then introduced. Well, they knew each other back from school when she stood up for her before, but nonetheless, she's introduced and she is a journalist. One thing I will note is that Anita says to Estella, when you get that glint in your eye, you tend to go really extreme. Which brings me back to her days at school where, yes, she was standing up for herself, but she always ends up taking it a little bit too far while she was standing up for herself. So I feel like that was a key piece that was missing into why she was expelled. Yes, she was standing up for herself, but she was doing it in maybe a very cruel way. And that's why her mother was calling her Cruella. And you see that she was trying to hide Cruella because her mother wanted her to be Estella. But since she found out that she's no longer guilty for her mother's death, she's no longer to blame, she feels like she's free to be who she wants to be. She's free to be herself. She's free to be Cruella. So she's back to being who she truly wants to be, not the person she was out of obligation. So Cruella wants to introduce herself to the fashion world and enlists Anita's help. But Anita is a little bit nervous about this because, like I mentioned before, she feels like Cruella can be a bit extreme. But she ends up agreeing to the job, and I'm wondering if she's agreeing because she feels like she owes Cruella for standing up for her, or she wants to further push her career in journalism. The boys get to work, they kidnap the dogs, well, they dog nap the dogs. Whatever, the dogs just get taken. Cruella moves on with her plans. She enlists the help of Artie, the person who owns the consignment shop. But I'm disappointed to see that she continues to speak down to her friends, the people that are helping her. Like, are you really going to bite the hand that feeds you? Well, the hand that supports you? I'm really glad that Jasper continues to stand up for himself and stands up for them, even though he seems to be still helping. He's at least saying something. I guess that's good. It looks to me that he's taking baby steps to giving her chances to maybe, hopefully, one day say no. She then decides that she was going to be Cruella 100% of the time, well, 90% of the time, and let Estella come out sometimes because she was done hiding who she truly was. Back at the ranch, Baroness is feeling like a fool and wondering who this Cruella person is. Who is Cruella with these great designs? She needs to figure out who it is because she is the fashionista. She is the queen fashionista and she needs to stay that way. Throughout all this, Estella maintains her job as a fashion designer for the Baroness while plotting the Baroness's downfall as Cruella. This is where the questions of dissociative identity disorder come in, and this is what the symptoms look like. According to NAMI, dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personalities disorder, is characterized by alternating between multiple identities. A person may feel like one or more voices are trying to take control in their head. Often these identities may have unique names, characteristics, mannerism, and voices. People with DID will experience gaps in memory of everyday events, personal information, and trauma. Women are more likely to be diagnosed as they more frequently present with acute dissociative symptoms. Men are more likely to deny symptoms and trauma histories and commonly exhibit more violent behavior rather than amnesia or fugue state. This can lead to false negative diagnoses. So what causes DID? Dissociative disorders usually develop as a way to cope with traumas. Dissociative disorders most often form in children exposed to long-term physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. And in Cruella's case, her mother's sudden death, becoming an orphan, and also her witnessing her mother's death and having to live a life as a petty thief. While I can't confidently say that Cruella has dissociative identity disorder, because she would have to really be able to tell us that she doesn't remember certain events. But I will say that she is really aware of Cruella and Estella and both of their benefits to her. After Estella's mother passed away, she intentionally put Cruella to the side, and she did so for years as a way to please her mother, as her way to assuage her guilt. But Cruella quickly returned once she learned she wasn't at fault. She now wanted to avenge her mother's death, and she really used every tool to her advantage. While I can't confirm her mental health diagnosis, I can confirm that according to Very Well Health and a few other sites, the reason for her black and white hair is due to something she was born with, a disease called poliosis. So moving forward, Cruella takes the fashion world by storm, and Baroness is struggling. She's not happy about this. The thing with Estella during this time is that even though she was wearing that red wig and she was Estella at work, Cruella was literally always there. It was like Cruella in a red wig. When Horace comes around Estella's work, the Baroness noticed him from the last time they were trying to steal from her. Cruella ends up making a beautiful dress for the Baroness, and I'm wondering if Estella really wanted to give her that dress, because the reason Baroness even got to get this beautiful dress is because Cruella Estella was in the alley designing that dress, and she was forced to give it up. The Baroness like, any thought you have belongs to me. But I'm wondering if Cruella or Estella made it for the Baroness to see the dress she was designing. So when Horace drops off the beads for the dress to be made, this is when Baroness notices him and says, you know this guy, or what is he doing? Wasn't he just stealing from me? Something goes off in her brain that I've seen this person before and they weren't on my side when I last saw them. Throughout all this, I'm wondering, should Horace or Jasper have worn some sort of disguise when coming to drop off the beads? I'm not saying that Horace had to wear a full head of hair or something. I'm just saying maybe a little mustache, some glasses, something different to throw off the scent. So by the time Baroness catches Estella working on the design in her alley, I think she starts to become weary of Estella. Like, could you possibly be Cruella? When Estella ends up finishing the dress, the Baroness asks for her to drink. And to me, I'm getting a little nervous because I'm like, don't drink from her. She suspects you. Since when did Baroness want to celebrate with any of the designers when they had a piece she thought was beautiful? I never saw that. I saw her praising herself. Of course, I was right. The Baroness ends up taking credit for the dress. And Estella's like, well, I did the dress too. Anyway, Baroness goes on to gloat herself and she's very happy. At dinner, the Baroness gives Estella the same talk that the Devil Wears Prada gives Andy. People are merely obstacles to propel you forward. That was nasty. Excuse me? It was very sad too. She definitely had traits of a narcissist. In the meantime, the boys are begrudgingly continuing on with Cruella Estella's plan. They're not happy about it, but they're still following through and supporting her. They even go on to share their grievances with her again, but Cruella doesn't care. She could care less. The only thing Cruella cares about is revenge at this point. She's not seeing anything else but that revenge. She was treating the boys like the Baroness treats her. Even the Dalmatians were scared. She had no agency over her life at work, and now she was asserting her newfound power on her friends, the people that love and care about her. As the movie progresses, you can see that the Baroness suspects Cruella, just like I thought. I had to give it to Cruella at this point in the movie because that dress was beautiful, but that dress turning out to be little moths or whatever flying out during that event, that was genius. She is so smart. And when Cruella's next fashion show comes on and she previously joked about the dog's fur, I was like, oh my God. I know I said that I wasn't the biggest fan of dogs because I was a little scared of them. I was like, I hope you didn't skin those dogs for their fur. That's inappropriate. And you could see that Jasper is disgusted at the thought of her using the dogs for her clothes. Things are changing. The boys are starting to really realize that maybe Estella will never be back. So in all of this, the boys end up getting caught. And while Cruella insults them, she does advocate for them to come back. She advocates for them to be released. Of course, it doesn't work. Since the Baroness will go to any length to be on top, she decides to set Cruella on fire. The news is reporting all of this, and I'm like, no one in the news thought it could have been the Baroness. And I know, yes, you don't want to spread misinformation and you don't want to worry people, but I would have been wondering, did the Baroness have anything to do with this? Because she was the only one that had anything to gain should Cruella disappear. But we later see that Estella Cruella survives because John, Baroness's right-hand man, saves her. And I did notice at some point in the movie, he was trying to throw her off thinking that Estella could be Cruella. So he's been having her back for a while now. He shows her the key and shares with her that, hey, the Baroness is your mother. She just didn't want to be a mother. She's so upset and she goes to visit who I'm guessing is now her adoptive mother. And she talks to her mother about this. And again, I loved to see this. I loved to see how connected she was to her mother. It was great. It was her comfort place. And this is where she comes to terms that she is not Estella, she's Cruella. She feels like Estella was brought onto her by her adoptive mother to keep her safe and really out of survival. Estella even says that she's not like the Baroness, but she's better than the Baroness. But what's better? Yeah, her fashions look better than the Baroness, but the way she's treating her loved ones and her family looks the same way the Baroness is treating hers. And they're very similar in the way they negatively treat people for their own gain. When Estella goes to speak with her mother, you can see the cracks of sadness that she shows just for a second, but a second nonetheless, for not being Estella, but for being Cruella mostly. And the thing, I was hoping that she remembered the boys, and she does. She crashes the prison, get them out, and the boys end up walking away. And while they're walking away, she's behind them trying to get their attention, and Jasper is like not having it. But Horace is more like, she's really alive, she's really alive. And Jasper's like, I don't care, she didn't treat us well. And that's the outcome when you've treated someone negatively and poorly for so long. There's only so much they can take. It was really interesting to see Cruella call her mother, someone who she really loved, a liar for not telling her her adoption story. But Cruella, how can you judge when you steal for a living? She apologizes to the boys, but I'm sensing an ulterior motive here. And I say this because she wants to take the Baroness down, and she'll do anything to meet that goal. So what's wrong with a little apology here and there to get what you want? They get on with the plan, and I will have to say I'm really excited to see this fashion show. I love fashion shows. And you can see Jasper often checked in on her throughout this time because Jasper really cares for them. They are his family, Horace and Estella, now Cruella. I was also wondering if John, the Baroness's sidekick and right-hand man, was double-crossing her throughout the whole time. I couldn't really trust him because he's been working with her for so long. But I will say, instead of just throwing the baby away, which is end up being Estella Cruella, he does find a safe home for the baby to go to. Cruella plans this whole thing. She ends up making it that everyone has her same hair. And I'm like, that's very smart and a great way to set up many distractions. I will say one of the assistants does try to warn Baroness, but as usual, she thinks she's perfect. She thinks she's the best. She knows everything. She doesn't want to hear what you have to say. It's her time to shine. It's her party. Cruella is able to steal some sort of jewelry from the Baroness, and it looks to be the whistles for the dogs. But remember, the dogs were with Estella for so long that I'm wondering if she did train the dogs. Baroness ends up giving a speech about how great Cruella was and how they're gonna miss her, blah, blah, blah. You could tell she is just bored and not really wanting to give this speech. But she does beforehand let her security know, hey, watch out for Cruella. I want her captured, and she is done after tonight. Cruella ends up really showing herself as Estella. Her and the Baroness end up going to the terrace where they start talking, and really, the Baroness is pretending to be this reformed person, apologizing to her, wanting to hug her, and all that. And of course, I'm suspicious. But what Estella Cruella has done is she has gathered everyone to come outside to see this conversation. And of course, Baroness can't help herself. She doesn't see that everyone's behind her. She pretends to hug Cruella, Estella, and she pushes her off the cliff. And I'm like, no, history is repeating itself. But I did see that Cruella set this up so perfectly because she knew Baroness would want to push her off the cliff because she's done that in the past. Baroness doesn't want to lose that castle. She doesn't want to lose her place in society. She wants to be the only one doing what she's doing. I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention that Baroness also knew that since Cruella, her daughter, was alive, that she could possibly be entitled to some of the fortune. So this could be also a reason why she did not want Cruella Estella to know anything or to be on top ever at all. She would have to share the money. That's where we see a funeral happening, and it's the funeral of Estella. Cruella has officially killed her off. She's officially done with her. And I'm wondering, what does that mean for the relationship with the boys? Is she still going to be speaking to them this negatively, or is she changing her tune? Going back to dissociative identity disorder, it is often not recommended for people to kill off certain personalities because those personalities often hold on to memories that that other personality isn't really privy to. But Cruella has had it with Estella. Estella was created to appease other people. Cruella is who she truly is. She not only buried Estella, but she sent Estella to go be with her adoptive mother because the adoptive mother wanted her to be Estella. So she said, you can have Estella. I'm here and I'm going to keep Cruella. To me, this was her taking back her power, reclaiming who she truly was, no longer hiding herself, no longer trying to appease anyone. And if you see in the back, Jasper and Horace are a little bit sad about this. They love Estella. Cruella hasn't been so kind to them. And I was wondering what happened. How did she make sure she survived that push? Because she knew Baroness was going to push her. She had a parachute. This thing seemed to have gone off without a hitch. All those, oh, you see this person, it's like she was leaving breadcrumbs for Baroness to see. But ultimately, she won. Baroness went off to jail. My only hope for Cruella is that she sees how loyal the boys have been to her, how kind they have been to her, how supportive they've been to her, and that she learns to treat them with respect. And I hope they learn to demand more respect from her and to make sure their boundaries are appropriately in place when dealing with her. Jasper, Horace, Anita, Artie, these are all people she needs to look out for. I truly enjoyed watching this movie. It really included everything I loved: fashion, mental health, and dissecting movies. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you. As always, if you're interested, please do me a favor: like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your post notifications. That would really help me out. And if there's any movies you'd like me to react or break down or do a deep dive to, let me know. I'd be glad to do it. Doing these really take me back to my grad school days where I just was learning and dissecting, and I really enjoyed that. I look forward to hearing from you in the comments. Bye now.